So hello and welcome to the Edge of Next vlog. My name's Scott MacArthur, and my mission on here, on this vlog and on my speaking and everything else I'm doing, is to try and inspire the human in human resources. And to do that, I've been trying to find connections, recommendations, and people that are inspiring. So today I'm going to be interviewing and chatting and mainly listening, I hope, to Hollie Whittles. So I'd like to say hello to Hollie. Hollie, how are you? Nice to see you.
Hi, good. Hi, Scott.
Hi. Now, we met in a very special place, didn't we?
We did. Was it 2 years ago? I can't even remember now.
It was a couple of years ago, and we both spoke at TEDx, didn't we?
We did.
How did you feel about that experience?
Do you know, of all the speaking that I've ever done, that was the most nerve-wracking thing. And I have no idea why I felt like that. But possibly I think it was because I decided in some great wisdom that I would perform instruments as part of the TEDx talk.
Yeah.
So, it's not just what you're saying. You're also thinking, oh my God, I'm putting myself out there on the internet as playing instruments. So, what if someone doesn't like it? So It was very scary, but good.
You hit the nail on the head, though. You were fantastic. I mean, I'll never forget you started with a piece of music, then you told us all that your first love was the recorder, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
So it started, for me personally, I think the recorder starts everything because, it teaches you the notes, how to read music, but also like the fingering, the combination. You can pretty much go on to play any instrument from that. And, nowadays, I think the quickest and fastest way that schools go down the route of is ukuleles, because I think you can play a tune quicker. It does mean that you're not learning, the notes necessarily and how to read the music. So, but yeah.
It's a bit odd, a ukulele sitting there. Look, that's a bit weird. Very odd. Anyway, yeah. But I mean, I found that experience. I mean, I remember your talk because of the music.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you had an interesting message as well, which if you don't mind, we could come back to.
Of course.
But I think, I don't know how you feel about TEDx now, but it's kind of, there's so many of them now. I wonder if it's still as impactful as it used to be. Have you any thoughts on that? I don't know if you've ever.
Yeah, I think there's only so many inspirational stories you can listen to, and people have had such great journeys, but almost it's become like there's too many now. So it's kind of like, how do you find the new next thing with the TEDx? So I was desperately trying to think of something a little bit different, which is why I went down the instrument route and kind of linked it to the world of work and why I thought it was important.
Well, it's also interesting, just again, this is pure coincidence, but one of the other people I've interviewed recently is a chap called Tom Morley, who was the drummer with Scrittability back in the 80s. And he uses music all the time. I mean, he lost his job in the band because they brought in the electronic, those horrible clap drums that they brought in the.
Oh, yeah.
Well, he lost his job because of that, because he obviously was a drummer, so he got kicked out by this box, and but now he uses it on the keynote stage and on the virtual stage to engage and motivate. So I think it's really quite exciting that the arts are making little inroads into I mean, they've always been around it, haven't they? They've always been around the periphery. I mean, I've done work with artists and stuff. But it's nice to see it. And are you seeing more of that? Are you seeing people asking you to think about music in the organizational world yet, or is it not quite happening yet, or how's that happening with you?
It's not quite happening yet, and I think especially in the climate we're currently in, I think arts, unfortunately, is kind of last on the list, and the focus is on the STEM subjects. But you ask any musician, anyone in the arts, they will tell you how important it is. And I still don't think the message is out there that if you are studying music or learning or playing an instrument, it does actually help improve your improves your cognitive ability, it improves everything. So I personally would like to see it being brought back into the workplace to help with that work-life balance piece, because especially now, we were just chatting earlier about you just stuck in front of a screen all day. That's no good for anyone's mental health. We've got to do something as an outlet.
Yes. So one of the things, I mean, your CV is interesting because you have a lot of different irons and a lot of different fires.
Yeah.
And I like that because I know from personal experience, it gives you a broader picture. You can see more than someone who's very, I mean, there's disadvantages to, I've found that to my detriment. There's just disadvantages to having that, but you see more than the person who's, you know, very, very focused, you know, like a clinical psychologist will see a lot less than what you see because you're seeing the bigger picture. So I'm interested in building on that, Holly, if we can, because I think there's stuff there that I'd love to hear your ideas on. But also, I think the inspiring word that I like. I mean, you know, inspiring people is an overused term, certainly in the speaking circuit. Everybody talks about, I want to inspire my audience, but actually, there's a reality there that you've just hit on. That I think lockdown. You know, I want inspired. You know, I'm sat in a little study at the top of our house just now. It's not that inspiring, you know, on your own. So one of your roles is as an HR director, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So what's that like at the moment? What's it like being an HR director right now in 2021?
Yeah, that's a very interesting place to be, because you literally have the workforce in the palm of your hand, and I felt a hell of a lot of responsibility to making sure that they're happy. It really, really worries me with some of our younger employees, you know, if they're still living with parents and they're just waking up in a bedroom, working in a bedroom and going back to sleep again. It's a big concern to me as someone that's kind of ultimately responsible for them. So I'm trying to think outside of the box and think, what else can I do to enhance this person's day? So for example, last Friday, we told everyone you're having the afternoon off, and we booked a virtual escape room for them. Yeah. So, you know, down tools, and you're all going to figure out how to get out of this virtual escape.
All right, excellent. I didn't even know there was such a thing as a virtual escape room.
Amazing feedback. They all absolutely loved it.
Go on, tell us, what did they have to do? You got me interested now.
It's same as like a normal escape room, but it's all done through Teams. But then they were given a challenge, and then they had to like use things like Google Maps and go onto different websites and get clues. They had to figure out an email thing, and then they get a code back, and then they'd unlock the next part of the challenge. So it was still very much a team building experience, but all just delivered virtually. And the company that set it up, it was a real nominal fee to register for it, and they've automated the entire process. So very, very simple. Right. But, you know, just try and do little things like that. And we've introduced like the concept of brown bag lunches, which is something we did anyway, you know, that old concept of bring your lunch and someone presents on any kind of topic. Yes. But we deliberately say to them, you know, don't bring a work topic, let's bring something that you're interested in. So like we had one guy did a presentation just on the Super Bowl. You know, I know nothing about the Super Bowl, but, you know, it's just really interesting to hear about their hobbies and what they want to talk about. So it's kind of listening to your employees and trying to work out ways that they want to be engaged with, and getting a real feel for how they're currently feeling. Because I think if you ask them short and quick, you know, are you happy, yes or no, they'll probably just go, yeah, everything's fine. But then it's kind of delving behind that. Actually, are you okay?
Well, that's exactly the nub of the reason why I wanted to speak to you. You've just nailed it, because I worry as well. I mean, I think anyone with any HR blood in their system is worried just now. And I have to say, I've been quite impressed with the HR community. I mean, I'm not always the biggest advocate of our profession because I often think we get in our own way. And that's another conversation, Holly. But I have to say, I've been really quite impressed with the way the profession has responded. But can I ask you some other questions? I mean, it might not be something you've done yet, but things that were obvious to me, because I'm not in the front line anymore. I'm not doing it anymore. So I was thinking, you know, how do you induct somebody? You know, how do you recruit somebody when it's all online? I mean, how do you retire? I mean, I could go on, you know where I'm coming from, you know, the sort of life cycle.
Yeah.
How do you do it without...
So we have literally just had that challenge. Right. So we had recruited a guy, and he started on the Monday. On the Tuesday, the government was like, we're going back down into lockdown again. So he had one day in our beautifully COVID secure office with all the screens that we'd invested in thousands of pounds. Yes, we're sending you all home now. So this poor chap, you know, we hadn't even finished inducting him. We hadn't even set up his workstation. So what I did was I turned it on its head and went back to the team that he was going to be working closest with and said, can you tell me all the different things you would want to know as part of that induction? And I got them to create a training pack. And then I said to each person, even if they normally wouldn't be interacting with him, I said, I want you to deliver that bit. I want you to deliver that bit. And we've done the whole thing via Teams. And rather than one or two people inducting them, it's literally everyone in the organization. We've all taken it in turns to spend time. And I think that's brought them up to speed quicker because they've built little relationships with everyone. But yeah, I really felt for him. You know, he had one day and then it was just like, you've got to go back home again.
Yeah, what a shame. I mean, and how has he responded to that? Has he responded positively, or how? I mean, I guess he would respond positively.
Yeah, he's responded very positively. So we had his first one-to-one, and we were like, "How do you feel you're getting on? Do you feel like you know people, and are you integrating? And you know, tell me about the culture." And he said he feels like he's got to know people. He's really enjoyed having that time with each person, and he said that he likes the culture of our business because there isn't ego where there could be. And that really made me think. I thought, oh, how have we achieved that? And then I thought, actually, that's come from top down. That's because we don't want big egos. We run a people-centric business. We're all about a learning organization, training, coaching, working as a team. And we haven't recruited anyone that has that big kind of, you know, ego type personality. So I'd never thought about that, but that was really nice feedback to receive.
That's lovely feedback. It's a good good story to tell in the future. Very good. So I mean, there was one thing that I've experienced, Holly. You might have done it, but I had never experienced it. I was speaking at a conference, and there was 400 people tuning in from all over the world, and that was kind of normal. You know, there was about 15 speakers or something, and it was the usual sort of thing you do. But what really was honestly amazing and much better than my talk was they had these networking sessions. Now I don't like networking. I'm quite nervous actually in groups. I like one-to-one. I'm not so good in groups. I always just hide behind a pint of Guinness or something. You know, that's my coping strategy. But what they did was they got us all to log on to this system, and I can't remember the name of the system for the life of me, but there was a system. And there was a little clock appeared, and someone appeared on your screen, and you just talked to them.
Oh.
And it was for 5 minutes. So if you got a real bore, and I have to say, I did about 70 of them, and there was only one person who was obviously, I don't know, he was experiencing something in his life that was making him grumpy. But everybody else, honestly, it was lovely. It really worked. It really worked. And I felt when I came away from that conference, I thought, I now know that company. You know, I felt, and I thought, God, you could use this in all sorts of places. You know, you could use it to do induction. You could imagine if you were inducting into a business, and, you know, every Friday afternoon they had to sit at the laptop for an hour and meet people randomly.
Yeah.
Quite a good idea, isn't it?
Yeah, really good idea. Yeah. And some of the networking I've been to, rather than just having your big grid of people and you go around and turn, I've seen people turn it on its head and actually sticking us out into breakout chats, and you just you know, network in those little chats, then come back again, and then we go back out into a different one. So I quite like that. But like you, I'm not a natural networker. I much prefer to kind of listen, really, go in and out. But you know, it is important for businesses to network.
Yeah, I always find the you know, small talk is definitely an art. You know, when you my other half, Samantha, she's brilliant at it. She can do small talk all day, you know, and keep people talking and happy and smiling. I'm like, oh, what am I going to say next? You know, it's definitely a skill. But okay, so the $64,000 million question, I guess, is, I mean, from all of this and through your multiple lenses, because you do a number of things, what do you think and this is a really unfair and massive question, but what do you think the impact of all of this is going to be on the workplace of the future, Holly? What do you think it could be like?
You know, I've been thinking a lot about the younger generation coming up through the workforce, and they, you know, people at university are not having the same university experience. They're not learning that networking that you do, that social networking that you do. And I think they're not going to come out with the same skills that possibly we might have done going through the same routes. So it concerns me with the younger generation, kind of their mental state and how they are going to be able to cope with the demands of the workplace. Particularly in terms of things like being able to innovate, think on your feet and research stuff. Certainly some of the students we've had come to us through work experience, they're almost looking to us to spoon feed them constantly. And I'm not quite sure where we're losing that people interaction and that ability to think. So the fact that we've all gone into lockdown, you know, I've got friends who've got children that they're mentally struggling with the fact they're locking down and not having that social interaction. So it worries me for the younger generation. And then, you know, with the older generations of workers, they've had to suddenly cope with all this technology and Teams and Zoom, and you know, they may not have been that confident with a laptop at the best of times, and all of a sudden they're having to do all this stuff. So that's a challenge in itself as well. So I think you can see different issues for each sort of layer of the business.
Yes. I was talking to someone recently who is mainly in the organizational design and development sort of area rather than HR purely. And one of his ideas was that he could see city centres being completely wiped out, you know, becoming, I mean, he's turned it, and he now talks about, you know, greening the centre of cities, and because people won't be called into those environments anymore. Now, I'm not sure about that, because I think this might be what you've just said, actually, and I'm just repeating it, to be honest. But I worry that if we don't have those hubs, you're not going to have that sort of interaction, those social events that you have. I mean, it does go too far a lot. I mean, I remember, and I've got caught up in it myself, so I'm not throwing stones at anybody, but you know, every night you're in the pub, or every weekend you're out late, but there is a good side to that, as well as obviously there is a bad side to that. So my view, and I'd like you to see what you think, is I think we will go back to the office, but it'll be in a different model. You know, I think it'll be a blend where maybe 2 or 3 days a week you're in the office and the rest of the week you're at home. Or it might be, if you've got, you know, thinking and writing to do, you stay at home. But if you've got to go to as you said, and I hadn't thought about that, the sort of the creative side of it, I mean, that's something you've got to do face to face. I don't think there's any evidence that you can do it online as efficient. It certainly is as effectively as you can in the office. How does that feel with you? Is that just nonsense, or does it feel like?
It is going to be the blended approach, I think. And companies will have to look at the way that they structure their office environments as well. So things like, you know, I know some companies are already leading the way by having games rooms and that kind of stuff, but I think that environment, rather than having people in pods and isolated, we're going to have to look at how people are in the workplace, and then providing that flexibility for them to be at home as well. But it is very industry led as well. Depends what type of business you're at. So for the business that I run, it's a digital business, and technically, yes, we can work from home. But when you're trying to transfer huge volumes of data up and down, expecting someone to do that over home broadband, it's not really that feasible. So, you know, the productivity of our organization is not as high, because they're trying to juggle all of this stuff, and literally the home broadband can't cope with it. So it does depend on what sector you're in.
Yes, and I mean, you can't make food products remotely. You know, you need to be in the factory, or you need to, you know.
I had that the other day. I had a random GP appointment where I'd had like a minor operation, and I had to book in to have the stitch removed. And when I got to the surgery, they were like, "Oh, this is a video appointment." So I'm like, well, how does that work? Are you going to watch me take my own stitch out? And then they started laughing back again. And, you know, that's like technology gone too far.
Yes. There was one example. I mean, again, you raise a really good point, and I don't think it's one that many people in the HR media are talking about, that it does tend to be industry specific. It's a bit like, you know, when you hear some of the hoity-toity types talking about, you know, we should all be in the gig economy. That works for people like you and me, but it doesn't work for a lot of other people. You know, it can drive them to the bottom. You know, it can be a really negative experience. But I had the other one that was interesting. I was interviewing a TV vet. He's one of these National Geographic guys. He goes to disasters and he sorts out all the animals and stuff. His name is Paul Ramos. He's a lovely guy. And Paul said to me, he said, the funny thing about this, because he's a locum as well, because when he's not doing TV work, he does locum veterinarian work. He said, the really weird thing is a lot of the activity that a vet undertakes, you can do virtually. And I was like, huh? He said, yeah, I didn't, and this is his words, not mine. He said, I didn't realize how much the animals problem was actually the humans problem. You know, the animals were having problems with their humans rather than the humans having problems with their animals. And I thought, oh, that's interesting, isn't it? You know, because he hadn't thought, I mean, he knew that instinctively from his experience, but he said to me, he never really thought about it in depth like that until the virtual stuff came in. And he says he's fixing animals virtually. Isn't that amazing?
That is fantastic.
Really interesting. So, I mean, that isn't going to be like in our industries. I mean, if you're in L&D or IT or whatever, there are, you know, as you say, again, very clearly, you said about upload speeds can't be done. I don't think webinars and training online is as effective as it is face-to-face. I know some people will argue with me on that, and I've never seen any data that supports it, and I've never met anybody that prefers virtual to face-to-face.
Yeah, in fact, we were having that debate last night. I'm doing a degree at a college, and of course we can't go into the college.
Yeah,
they were asking us to feed back on how has the online experience been, but actually it's quite interesting. The split was 50-50, so half the people were going, yeah, much prefer it just all online. Other half were saying, no, I'd rather be in the classroom, I'd rather be able to go into the library, I want to be able to socialize. Other half, you know, well, I've got kids at home and I have to do the childcare, I'd have to do all the travel, you know, I feel like I can just do it all online. So yeah, I think the jury's still out on that really, but I agree. I think it is better in person. You can get a feel, you can see the whites of their eyes.
I mean, my daughter is training to be a mental health nurse. So she obviously has to go in to meet patients. I mean, that she's on the ward. I think she does 8 weeks in the ward and then 8 weeks of teaching. And she's found the ward work very difficult, you know, because of the patient types, but also because of the lockdown issues. But she's really struggling with the lectures being online. You know, this is, I don't think it's very contentious to say this, but the standard of lecturing in the UK isn't as high as perhaps it could be. I mean, name a good lecturer that you had at university. I think I can think of one.
I can think of one,
yeah. And if you then put them in front of a camera, God forbid, you know, it's going to be even worse. So, and that's a reality that people aren't talking about. It's too controversial to talk about it like that. But my eldest, he's doing a master's just now in history, and I think it's because it's history he finds it okay. He's finding it useful to be online all the time. He misses going out with his friends and socializing, but he said to me last night, he said, I think academically it's okay, Dad, I can cope with this. So maybe again, I don't know what you think, but maybe again, Holly, the answer is going to be, it's going to be a blend.
Yeah, but you're right. We can't expect people that have been used to teaching in person to suddenly be amazing at teaching online, because it is an art form because you've got to be able to project your personality. You've got to be prepared to receive no feedback. You're just looking at a sea of maybe cameras off, you know, how do you know they're even there? How do you build in that kind of ice-breaking, teamwork? And, you know, in the feedback session we were having last night, there were a load of accounting students who were saying they were really struggling to learn online because they literally can't see the detail of what the lecturer's doing in whatever accounting program they're choosing to show them. And then you had all the HR students going, oh, it's fine because we're just listening to a lecture. So again, it depends on the topic that's being taught really, I suppose, but you're right about the person.
Yes. It's going to be interesting to see how it all comes out. And I was watching, do you know Steven Pinker's work? Do you know the No,
I've not heard of that.
Stephen's a very well respected. He's actually a linguist, but he's a psychologist. But he's moved into he's one of these. How would you describe him? He's a real character, and he's written some very, very well known books. The Better of Our Angels, and he's written about grammar, and he's written about writing. He's an interesting professor, and he's just started an online course. God, Holly, it's absolutely crap. I mean, world-class crap. And he's one of the top academics on the planet. You know, he's not just a famous guy. He's proper. He's had like 10 top 10 selling books. He's you know, and I watched his introduction to psychology first lecture the other night, and oh God, it was terrible. I really felt for him, actually. You know, it was like, this is not what he should be doing. You know, he should have an audience and be working off that audience. So yeah, interesting times and challenges, I think, for everybody.
It is. Yeah. I think people have to, if you're in a position where you're giving talks or whether you are teaching people, you have to take some ownership for your own setup as well. I think, you know, having the right camera, the microphone, the background, and, you know, we've had enough time to have got those things sorted now. So I still don't understand why sometimes I join stuff and the person's like, oh, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to share this. And, you know, their camera's really rubbish. And I'm like, you know, we need to, you know, get better at this.
We do. And again, that conference I was just telling you about earlier, there was only 2 speakers in the group that had any idea about doing virtual delivery. You know, none of them had thought. I mean, it was all nose hair and green screens. And I mean, green screens at the best of times are quite bad. But they all had these sort of green screens with their hair disappearing and it was terrible.
Yeah.
No, it's not acceptable. People need to catch up. Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right there. So
yeah.
So to move on a little bit, but it's still in the same vein, because I mean, this is really interesting. And as someone who's got that breadth, I mean, you might want to give the audience a little bit of, you know, background to what else you do, because we've only really spoken a little bit about your music and your HR work. But, you know, is there anything else that you're thinking about at the moment? Could I do this? Could I do that? Could I try this? Because I think one of the things a lot of people are looking for is ideas. Because and it's practical stuff, Holly. It's not, it used to be you could stand up and do a Simon Sinek, well, the why, you know, you could do all that stuff. I don't think, certainly not my colleagues are asking for that anymore. They're saying, okay, how do I do induction? How do I do recruitment? How do I do this? How do I do that? You know, it's definitely changed. Is there anything else that pops in? I mean, you don't need to be anything there, but any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, so there was one thing that I did yesterday. So, you know, I have another company where I do talks and webinars, and I was approached to deliver a talk on business strategy and vision. Right. So I did it yesterday. It was about 180 people logged on. And with my talks, I try and give them content, but also tools and resources that by the end of it they think, oh, I can go away and look at that. So rather than being all flowery and talking for an hour and you haven't actually got anything by the end of it, with mine, I'm like, you know, this is what I use in my business. This is how I plan ahead. This is what I did last year. These are the tools and free websites and templates that I use. And the feedback was amazing. They were like, you've made that so simple. There was so much content in there, but by the end of it, there were a couple of things that I could then implement straight away. So I think more things like that for businesses that are struggling, they're trying to transform, and they're just looking for help and support, really.
Yes, right. And specifically on the wellness agenda, because I know and I really admire the work you've done in that place. How do we deal with this? Because I'm not by any means one of these conspiracy theorists, but I do worry that the next few years are going to be, you know, a real concern for well-being. And I mean, again, I'm not an expert at all, but, you know, things like mental health. This must, I mean, I hadn't thought about it, actually. It was really interesting when you said about young people earlier, but I'm sure it's across the age range that this is going to have one hell of an impact on organizations. How do we deal with it?
Yeah, so I'd already sort of started talking about digital detox even before like the global pandemic happened. So I was giving talks about the positives, but also the negatives of social media, and the fact that, you know, our phones are designed to keep you on them, the persuasive design of them. You know, when you pull the screen down and you get rewarded by a bouncy feature, that's designed to keep you there. You know, when people are typing, you've got like the little ellipse, it stops jumping, you know, and it triggers that response in you, a stress response of, oh, what are they typing? And you stay on the phone longer waiting for them to finish. So I was already kind of thinking about this, and that's what gave me the idea for the TEDx talk about, well, how do you take that one step further and get rid of that digital overwhelm feeling? So simple strategies like turning off the red dot notifications, moving apps off the home screen so you're not tempted to keep jumping into Facebook, little simple things that you can do, chunking your time. So yes, some businesses do need to use social media, you know, for marketing purposes, but that doesn't mean that you should spend the whole day on it. So it's allowing yourself time to do a bit of email, a bit of social media, that kind of stuff. And then I've kind of brought in that concept of, well, what about the hobbies that we used to love doing? You know, why, if you've got a clarinet in the wardrobe that you haven't played for 30 years, as an adult, why not find a band or form a band? And my kind of question to the ether was, well, why can't companies have company choirs, company orchestras, you know, challenge each other to learn an instrument and all do your grade 1 at the same time as a bit of fun and a bit of relaxation.
A brilliant idea. It's really weird. When this is me showing my age, but my first job in HR, well, my first proper job in HR was welfare officer, and we had 75,000 employees, and I was the personnel officer. That really show my age.
Old terminology.
Personnel officer brackets welfare, right? And I had a massive budget. I had, you know, how many? 25 social clubs. We had our orchestra. We had all sorts of stuff. And it was one of the hardest jobs I've ever done because it was constant. The employees were so engaged in it, you know, because they were getting, whether it was football, cricket, we had sewing, we had health and safety competitions. I mean, it was enormous. And then along came Thatcher, and that got taken out. And then just across companies, I mean, the welfare officer thing disappeared almost across the world, never mind in the UK. But then I think it was about 3 weeks ago, I did a very short, one of these espresso talks, you know, you do 5-minute things.
Yeah.
And one of the HR directors called me and she said, oh, it's really interesting, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, thanks. She said, I'd never thought that HR could ever have responsibility for welfare. And I'm like, well, what the fuck do they have responsibility for? You know, and it's gone from the rubric, because everybody thought, oh, you can't measure it, it's not worth anything. But now everybody's talking about it again. And I, for one, I'm absolutely delighted about it.
Yeah, me too.
I'm absolutely delighted about it. And it is something, again, you said earlier about going full circle, you know, we're coming back on this. Maybe we can be called personnel again, because I hate HR as a phrase. I hate being a HR professional. HR, what does HR mean?
Yeah, HR business partner and all that. When all that came out.
Yeah, I remember that really well. But it would be interesting, and I love the idea. You just reminded me of the orchestra idea. I mean, I've never thought of doing everybody do their grades together. Can you imagine how much fun that would be?
Yeah, it would be hilarious. And so and it would be like you'd be spurring each other on. So I think that's one of the things our employees do like doing, is like, you know, if you've got like an Apple Watch and how many steps you're doing each day and they're all challenging each other, you know, you could do the same with the arts.
Yes. Well, you put a smile on my face. That just sums it up. You know, it's like, you know, you don't think, often we get dragged into, you know, what's the return on investment? What's the shareholder value? Customer first, you know. And I never believed any of that stuff. I always believed employees first, absolutely every time. And there's a lot of evidence that that's right. But what about HR though? How do you think the profession's going to emerge from this? What do you think that's going to happen to the profession?
I think HR has kind of led throughout this pandemic without realizing it, because they've had to really transform the way that businesses work and the workforces work. But I think coming out the other end of it, they will have realized that it's really important to have that employee mental health being at the fore of the business. So for me, people are the business. Without them, our business could not function. And I think at the same time, educational will also realise, we can't let the arts go. We've got to go back to how we used to be. When I was at school, there were recorded clubs, choirs, orchestras, loads of stuff happening, and it really breaks my heart when I see that that's one of the first things being cut, so they can do extra maths and English. And yes, that's important, but when we're recruiting, we're not just asking them about the maths and the English. We're like, what are you doing as a person? What extra experiences have you had? Because if you've played in an orchestra, you know how to work in a team. You know how to listen, you know how to lead. There's all these different skills that you can learn, and the arts bring that to the forefront.
Whoa. Now, final sort of question really, and it is more of that, the arts stuff, because I passionately agree with you. I mean, I actually think it's criminal what's happened in schools. I mean, and I mean it. I mean, it's to the point of child abuse.
Yeah.
Because I didn't, this is really bad admission as a parent, but I didn't know that this was happening to my children. Maybe that was because I was too busy at work and it went past me. I think it's criminal. It's a bit like, the only thing I can liken it to is companies that the first thing they cut out is training.
Yeah.
What are these companies doing? So how do we, have you any ideas? This is you're turning you into a politician here, Holly. What can we do? I mean, how do we get that back into because it seems to me they're very reactive. They go one way or they go the other way, and it's never going to be that. It's got to be a blend. How do we do it? How do we, I mean, I think we've touched on some ideas already. Any other thoughts on how we can bring the arts and personal development, I guess is the other one, into the forefront rather than it being the first thing to get cut?
Yeah, I think, in schools' defence, they've had a lot of stuff thrown at them. So, I do get it when things have to be cut. But then I think maybe we could forge stronger connections between schools and businesses. So getting people like you and I in to talk to them and inspire them, and say, well, this has been my journey, this is my experience, and this is what I have done with music. Whilst I didn't go into it professionally, I could have done, but I've kept it on the sidelines, but it's still very much part of my life. And, I do talks like that because it's so important. So I think using things like the Enterprise Advisor Network, the STEM ambassadors, getting on boards of governors, I think arts has to be at the table from the top down. And one of my closest friends is a head teacher of a very good school, and he is a musician in his spare time. And he pushes that down throughout the rest of the school. He's done lockdown videos with them where halfway through the kids have been doing like this song, and then he's there with an electric guitar. And I'm just like, that is the head teacher of this school, So I think getting businesses linked closer with schools, I think, is really important.
That's a really, really good idea. And I have to say, you give a lot of energy across the video, Holly. You do. You got me smiling. It's genuine. I'm not making it up. Thank you. So
I'll send you a link to it. It's a great video.
Yeah. So just to end with then, a couple of things to end with. If there was a book or a video or a course or something that you would recommend that people look at or read or participate in, what would it be? I know that's a big question again, but so then you would recommend to folk to pick up and have a look at?
Oh, that's a really difficult question because there's so much stuff out there. There was a really good book that I read, and it's on Amazon. It's called How to Break Up with Your Phone. And I laughed my head off reading that. I've forgotten who wrote it, but that's a really nice little book, and there's a little picture of a phone stuck to someone's face. So just little things like that you can kind of use to get rid of that overwhelming feeling.
Okay. I'll make sure I put the image in here when we do the edit so they can see it. So
yeah.
And then finally, if people would like to be in touch with you or talk to you, how do they do that? How would you encourage them to do that?
Yeah, they can find me easily on the internet. I'm pretty much on everything as at Fraggle Works. So Fraggle as in Fraggle Rock, Fraggle Works.
Is that where Fraggle came from?
I did used to like Fraggle Rock, and
right.
I couldn't call my company Fraggle Rock, so I just made a word out of nowhere.
Right, excellent. Well, Holly, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I've genuinely enjoyed that. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you.